Hello, good afternoon. I'm Paula Cecilia E. Carlos, and I will discuss the topic of Filipino based on Bill of Rights and the duties and obligations of Filipinos as citizens. There are 22 sections under the Bill of Rights, and there are 4 sections under the duties and obligations of Filipinos as citizens. According to the Republic of the Philippines, here in Section 1, no one may be deprived of their life, liberty, or property without due process of law, and no one shall be denied equal treatment under the law. It means that every citizen has the right to live and exercise freedom which is governed by the laws. Second is the Section 2, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures of any kind and or any purpose shall be inviolable, and no search warrant or warrant of arrest shall be issued unless there is probable cause, which shall be determined personally by the judge after examination under oath or affirmation of the complainant and in any witnesses he may produce, and specifically describing the place to be searched and the persons to be searched. Means that every citizen has the right to his or her personal life, thus his or her property should not be searched unless it is warranted by the court. Any search of warrant describes the place, person, or property to be seized. Next is Section 3. Number 1. The privacy of communication and correspondence shall be protected unless the court issues a legitimate order or where public safety or order necessitates it as provided by law. It means that every Filipino has right to privacy of communication and that should not be violated except when public safety is at risk, thus the court may intervene lawfully. The next in Section 3, Number 2. Evidence gathered in contravention of this or the preceding clause is inadmissible in any proceeding for any purpose. It means that any violation of his privacy of communication is not accepted by the court. The next one is the Section 4. No law shall be made restricting people's right to free speech, expression, or the press, or their right to peacefully assemble and petition the government for redress or grievances. It only means that Filipinos have the right for freedom of speech and make petitions to the government peacefully. Next is the Section 5. There shall be no law restricting the free exercise of religion or establishing a religious establishment. The exercise and enjoyment of religious profession and worship will be permitted in perpetuity, without discrimination or preference. For the enjoyment of civil or political rights, no religious test shall be imposed. It means that every Filipino has the right to express his or her religious belief, thus he or she shouldn't be persecuted in exercising his or her civil or political rights. Next is Section 6. The freedom of abode and the ability to change it within the boundaries set by law and not be infringed upon unless by a legitimate order of the court. The right to travel shall not be restricted unless it is in the interest of national security, public safety, or public health as it provided by law. Filipinos have the right to choose where to settle or build their lawful residence or travel, except upon lawful order of the court when national security, public safety, or public health are endangered. The next one is Section 7. The people's right to know about issues of public importance must be respected. The citizens shall have access to all the records, documents, and papers pertaining to official acts, transactions, or decisions, as well as government research data used as basis for policy development subject to any legal constraints. It means that Filipinos have the right to access public information, for example, results of election, disaster warnings, etc. The next is official records. It means that the birth certificate, marriage certificate, death record, or school record. Also, data results about different variants of viruses that may endanger the health of the general public. And the next one is the Section 8. People's right to form unions, groups, or societies for non-violent purposes, including those employed in the public and private sectors, will not be infringed. It means that working Filipinos have the right to form union. For example, the labor union, associations. Example of this is the different NGOs and government associations, and the societies as long as they are lawful. The next one is the Section 9. Private property shall not be taken for public use without just compensation. It means that Filipinos have the right to own private property, and those are not to be used publicly without giving the owners fair payment for the said property. And number 10, no law impairing the obligation of contracts shall be passed. It means that Filipinos have the constitutional right to make lawful contracts with others. And in Section 11, access to the courts and quasi-judicial organization as well as sufficient legal help shall not be refused to anyone because of their financial situation. Here in Section 11, it only means that Filipinos have the right to access to the courts and legal advice regardless of their economic status. Justice is for all the people. The next is Section 12. Number 1. Any person being investigated for committing a crime has the right to be notified of his right to stay silent and to be presented by the competent and impartial counsel, ideally of his own choosing. If a person cannot afford legal presentation, he or must be provided with one. Only in writing and in the presence of counsel can these rights be waived. Here in Section 12, number 1, it only means that every citizen who is under investigation due to committing a crime has the right to remain silent and to have a competent lawyer of his or her own choice. If he or she can't afford a lawyer, the government should provide him or her. This right is lawful and can't be taken away from him or her except through a waiver, which is made with the presence of his or her lawyer. And second is the torture, force, assault, threats, intimidation, or any other form of coercion will not be utilized against him. Solitary confinement, incommunicado, imprisonment, and other similar kinds of detention are outlawed. Here in Section 12, number 2, it means that any accused should not be tortured or intimidated or forced to do something against his or her will. And the next one is any confession or admission acquired is contravened. It means that here in section number 12, number 3, no forced confession or admission will be used as evidence against the accused. And the next one here in Section 12, number 4, violation of this provision will be subject to criminal and civil penalties, as well as compensation and rehabilitation for victims of torture and similar abuses and their families. It means that anything done in violation of his action shall be sanctioned by the court through rehabilitation and proper compensation of the victim. The next is Section 13. All persons except those charged with offenses punishable by reclusion perpetua when evidence of guilt is strong shall be for conviction be bailable by sufficient sureties or be released on recognizance as may be provided by law. The right to bail shall not be impaired even when the privilege of the right of habeas corpus is suspended. Excessive bail shall not be required. Here in Section 13, it only means that bail is allowed for charged persons except with offenses that are punishable by reclusion perpetua or permanent imprisonment for 40 years. Reclusion perpetua, though, refers to the permanent imprisonments. It is different from the life imprisonment. Moreover, reclusion perpetua is prescribed on crimes punishable by the revised penal code, while the life imprisonment is imposed on offenses punishable by the special laws. The differences between reclusion perpetua and the life imprisonment is reclusion perpetua carries the accessory penalty where the prisoner is barred for life from holding political office, while life imprisonment does not carry this penalty. The second is the reclusion perpetua is fixed at 40 years imprisonment and cannot be charged during the sentencing. It does not allow parole until the first 30 years of the sentence has been served. After 40 years without parole, the sentence expires while life imprisonment does have any definite extent of imprisonment and prisoners can be paroled. The next is the section 14 number 1. Here in section 14 number 1, no person shall be held to answer for a criminal offense without due process of law. It means that every person has the right to due process of law. The second in section 14 is the accused shall be presumed innocent until proven guilty in all criminal persecutions and shall have the right to be heard by himself and counsel, to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation against him, to have a speedy, impartial, and public trial, to meet the witnesses face to face, and to have compulsory process to secure the attendance of witnesses and the production of evidence. After arraignment, however, the accused's absence may not be prevent the trial from proceeding if he has been properly notified and his failure to attend is unreasonable. It only means that the accused is considered innocent until proven guilty. Thus, the person has the right to be heard, to have a lawyer, present witnesses and evidences, to have a speedy and just trial, and has the right to be notified of the trial after the arraignment. But the accused's absence in the trial after having notified can be justified. The next is section 15. Except in instances of invasion or revolt when the public safety needs it, the privilege of habeas corpus shall not be suspended. It only means that every Filipino has the privilege of exercising freedom of speech except in cases of rebellion or invasion of public safety. The next is the section 16. Everyone has the right to a prompt resolution of their cases in any judicial, quasi-judicial, or administrative body. Here in section 16, it only means that all of Filipinos are rightful to defend themselves through appropriate lawyers before any administrative bodies or before any court or quasi-judicial. Quasi-judicial is similar to the court hearing performed by an official other than a judge. The next is section 17. No person shall be compelled to be a witness against himself. It only means that anyone is forced to witness against himself. In other words, we are not obligated to witness against ourselves. The next is section 18, number 1. No person shall be detained solely by reason of his political beliefs and aspirations. Here in section 18, number 1, there is not a person who shall be detained or imprisoned merely because of his or her political beliefs and aspirations. The next is in section 18, number 2, no involuntary servitude in any form shall exist except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. It only means that a person can't be forced for his or her service except as a penalty or punishment for a crime he or she committed. The next is section 19, number 1. Excessive fines are prohibited, as are cruel, degrading, or inhumane punishments. Neither shall the death penalty be applied until the Congress expressly authorizes it in the future for serious grounds concerning grave crimes. Any death punishment that has already been exposed will be modified to a life sentence. Section 19, number 1. Excessive fines are prohibited as a cruel, degrading, or inhumane punishments. Neither shall the death penalty be applied until the Congress expressly authorizes it in the future for serious grounds concerning grave crimes. Any death punishment that has been already imposed will be modified to a life sentence. Here in Section 19, it only means that no excessive penalties or fines shall be imposed, as well as a cruel, degrading, or inhuman punishment. Death penalty is imposed only for compelling reasons that are involved in heinous crimes. It is the Congress that provides for it. Any death penalty that already imposed prior to this reduced to reclusion perpetua. The next is Section 19, number 2. Physical, psychological, or degrading punishment against any prisoner or detainee, as well as the use of poor or inadequate penal facilities under inhuman conditions, will be prosecuted under the legislation. Here in Section 19, number 2, it only means that the law prohibits physical, psychological, or any degrading punishment on prisoners or detainees. They should be treated humanly. Otherwise, those handling them will be dealt with by law. The next is Section 20. No person shall be imprisoned for debt or non-payment of a poll or tax. Here in Section 20, a person who cannot pay his or her debt or poll tax is not eligible for imprisonment. The next is Section 21. For the same offense, no one shall be put in peril of punishment again. If an act is punishable by both a statute and an ordinance, conviction or acquittal under either will prevent the same act from being prosecuted again. Section 21. For the same offense, no one shall be put in peril of punishment again. If an act is punishable by both on statute and in ordinance, conviction or acquittal under either will be prevent the same act from being prosecuted again. Here in 21, it only means that no person shall be punished twice on the same offense. If the same offense is committed again, there will be another trial for the same act. The last section here in the Bill of Rights is the Section 22. No ex post facto law or bill of attainder shall be enacted. It only means that there is no law that will change legal consequences of actions that were committed before a law against those are enacted. In other words, any action is not considered criminal unless there is an existing law against such an action. Ex post facto law is illegal because it deprives people of a sense of what behavior will or will not be punished and allows for random punishment at whim of those in power. The next is the duties and obligations of Filipinos as citizens. First is here in duties and obligation is the Section 1. It is the citizen's responsibility to be loyal to the Republic and honor the Philippine flag, to defend the state and contribute to its development and welfare, to uphold the Constitution and obey the laws, and to cooperate with duly constituted authorities in achieving and maintaining a just and orderly society. It means that honoring the Philippine flag means observing the Philippine laws to have a peacefully society. It only means cooperating with those who are assigned by the government, like the police force, local officials, and many more, to implement the laws based on what are stipulated in the Philippine Constitution. And the next is Section 2. Individual rights impose a correlative duty on the individual to exercise them responsibly and with proper consideration for rights of others. It means that only individual rights should be exercised responsibly, taking into consideration by duly rights of others. The next is Section 3. It shall be the duty of every citizen to engage in gainful work to assure himself and his family a life worthy of human dignity. It means that every mature citizen should engage in gainful right to support him or himself or herself or his or her family, and not always depending on government financial assistance. Doing such is a way of making himself or herself dignified. And the last section is the section 4. It shall be the obligation of every citizen qualified to vote to register and cast his vote. It only means that every qualified citizen has a duty to express his or her choice of political leaders through casting his or her vote during elections. So that would be the Bill of Rights and the duties and obligations of Filipinos as citizens. Thank you and have a great day. Bye.